So here at Railroads University, it's so important to us that whether we are meeting in person or connecting like this online, that we share an acknowledgement of our traditional lands. So here at Railroads University, our campus is located on the traditional lands of the Kusepsum and Lekwungen ancestors and families. It's with great gratitude that we live, learn, work, and play in this space where the past, present, and future scopes of Indigenous and non Indigenous students, staff, and faculty come together. And with that, we'll head to the next slide and I will pass it over to our host today, Marilyn, to get us started.
Thanks, Selena. Today, we're going to, a kind of map of our territory here is that we will begin with some welcome and introductions, and then move to the sort of a commentary on leadership as holding space, part 2. The part 1 version, I expect some of you on the call today were at. It was headed by my colleague Kathy Bishop, and it was and I'll describe kind of the segue between the two during the presentation. Part of our time together is going to be an opportunity to chat with each other briefly, and then we'll have a look at the Executive Leadership Program and the Values-Based Leadership Certificate, which Kathy and I have worked strenuously on to make a wonderful couple of options for you. And then we'll wrap up. So first of all, welcome. And I want to acknowledge especially our host. She called me a host, but I feel like a guest, Selena Kumar, who's Kunar from the our communications department, and my dear colleague, Dr. Kathy Bishop, who conducted part one of this event. I just got a call from somebody I've had a call into for a whole day. So anyway, so listen, here we began, what's it, 3 weeks ago, roughly, with looking at holding space, leadership as holding space. And what do we mean by that? Basically an orientation to leadership that's almost completely opposite to what we've come in our culture to see as leadership. Even to the point of talking about letting go of judgment and control. The idea is that we are walking with one another in a shared journey to discover what we now don't know, but urgently needed in how we might go forward together. Part of that discussion was also the image of a bowl, which includes, in our current way of thinking about leadership, it's more like an arrow and I'll come to that in a minute, to explain that in a minute. But this includes not only the usual safety and protection elements, but also things that we don't usually associate with organizational leadership: compassion, openness to mystery. So let's launch into that and look at first the kinds of qualities and requirements of this approach to leadership, which is quite different again than what we usually think about as organizational leadership. One is recognizing difference. Another is acknowledging our limitations. Can you imagine leaders acknowledging our limitations? Well, it's critical. And evening the playing field, centering the most marginalized and challenging any abuse of power that creates discomfort and distraction and unfairness. As leaders, we're being asked in this approach not to be afraid to flounder. Can you imagine a leader expecting that there will be unproductive steps, but that it's absolutely necessary in discovering a positive way forward? it's important because of most of us are have problems with bravery, with uncertainty, to invite bravery and along with, in other words, not reducing people, others worrying about floundering. We want to also not disrupt the narrative and do things more mindfully. So we want to disrupt a narrative that is not representative of our experience anymore, and that's a hard thing to do. To invite ourselves into just experiencing, being present to the issues. And also to, I'm at my best when I'm relaxed and when I feel I'm in the right place doing the right thing. So maintaining a heart at peace, because we have to be so attentive. This is all about going from advocating something to attending. Maintaining, yes. And then finally, this from Adam Kahane, who I knew, actually his mom was in a class with me. Standing at the Adam Kahane does some wonderful work with large groups planning forward in this kind of a space, but he talks about standing at the intersection of power and love, two terms that we don't usually associate with one another. So what we're talking, and I think in the last session with Kathy, and she can come back to that when she launches here, small group gatherings are typically what we imagine in holding space, where everybody can talk to everybody. But there's also medium and large group gatherings and organizations and networks that could also, in a more expanded context, be the same kind of inquiring, present, forward seeking dialogue with others. So those are all adaptations that are important, I think, to especially to executive leaders who we're really, Kathy and I are working with a specialization in the MA leadership, which is especially designed for senior and executive leaders who have so much impact on our work life and other kinds of group setting, institution setting life, where actually there's a role for an executive leader, not to have a more sort of symbolic creation of holding space. And that's what we're going to look at partly today. And drill down to some of the qualities of the practice of holding space, as well as an example of what I'm talking about, the executive action in holding space in my own workplace. On June the 4th, Philip Steenkamp, our president, opened a conversation, a very serious conversation with people at Royal Roads on the occasion of the discovery of 215 graves in Kamloops at the residential school. He stated powerfully, the way forward is to listen. That is about holding space. And he also declared a recognition that we are in unknown territory when he echoed the call for two Indigenous one national, one BC leader to openly face the horror of the discovery and stand in solidarity with First Nations people. And we are, in that respect, in a unknown territory of the evolution of our relationship with our Indigenous neighbors. He also attended a vigil and supported dialogue in all kinds of very concrete ways. So that's an example of what we might look at today in the broader context of organizations and their senior leaders. This is one of 6 essential practices, or part of it's one version of 6 essential practices that we promote in our executive leadership specialization. And it's about addressing inequities and navigating social and political complexities in a world, in our organization and in the wider world. So that's what we're keying off with today, the context. So let's look at what it means to move from leading in the known world, which is what we mostly know, to leading in the unknown. So leading in the known is where we typically work in organizational structures that are carefully boundaried and described. We work towards strategic goals that have been defined ahead of time. Remember the 5-year plan? We are given authority to see that they are delivered, and we look for, we must have knowledge of those targets, procedures, and policies. We are expected also to demonstrate professional and positional expertise. We are people who are expected to know. Now, this is important. This is an important kind of leadership. And I can tell you, when I go to see my surgeon about my broken arm this afternoon, I clearly want him, or dearly want him, to all that from him. However, as we will, as I believe we'll probably agree, that we are entering a new kind of space in a variety of ways, more frequently than before, which is when we're facing an environment with little structure and unknown and critical challenges about which we know a whole lot less. This is the world of leadership through influence, which is very different than leadership through authority. And we'll touch on that throughout the rest of this presentation. It's a matter of being grounded in attention to the context that we're in and the meaning of the challenge that we are together addressing or searching. And it's working with others through having earned credibility in our attention to walking our talk, our values, and being transparent in our intentions. So the huge emphasis on creating trust, because that is at a premium in an unknown world for most of us. In this presentation, let's just see, yeah. In this presentation, I want to touch on 5 notions related to holding space, whether it's, especially if it's at the larger, wider contextual level, but also applies entirely at the face-to-face or direct relationship level that Kathy spoke about several weeks ago. In significant and unprecedented extreme events for which we have no ways of thinking of acting adequately, such as the heat dome, and I'm going to put in front of you a series of really recent critical events that suggest very serious consequences, even to the matter of changing our language. Heat dome, new thing, unprecedented fires, and self-catalyzing heat. That's the new thing, not known before. And this more recently, the atmospheric river, another new term, that dumped record-setting amounts of rain on BC's lower mainland and elsewhere too, but I'll just leave it at that. These are events that have us tuned up to we are in a different world. other significant events. We spoke initially about the horrific residential school graves that have been recently found, and which really put us in the face of what is the new order of our relationships between settler descendants and Indigenous people. That is not clear, and it is not, and it's not something we know all the details about. And then, of course, who could leave out the probably one of the most, if not the most, devastating planetary pandemic of COVID-19. Where will it end? Here we are, coming up to 2 years after it began, like 1 3/4 years. And we're still wondering when the variants are going to stop. It just keeps going. So where will it end, and will it end? We're in the face of more uncertainty. The one thing that's happened in our world that also has created real questions is, in my lifetime, I've never experienced or observed the depth of division we're experiencing in radical polarization in the US and Western world. That's hugely limiting our capability to deal with the other crises. Daunting challenges, completely unknown territory. Where might we begin? Certainly, holding space is critical to creating connections across divides. So I want to go now from disruption, which all those events are, which put us on notice in front of the possibility, in fact, the necessity of entering the unknown together in a way that has some prospect of us advancing through it. Liminality. That term comes from the Latin word limen, which means threshold. What it means really is stepping across something, leaving one space and entering a whole new world. And so frightening, uncertain, but necessary if we're going to deal with the crisis. So what drives us is the important search for how to be differently. And of course, that requires a tremendous amount of courage. There are no people on the face of the earth that seem to be expected to have all the answers than leaders, and especially senior leaders. Yet we have to exert leadership, and in a good way, and admit that we are operating in territory that we don't know and have no control about. So that's the challenge: liminality, crossing the threshold. Another notion I want to put in front of you is the notion of influence. Typically, in our sphere where we come from, we typically expect leaders to be in control. And as leaders, we expect to be able to control. And, there's, of course, wise adaptations to that. We don't see it everywhere. But the point is that we are given authority in organizational settings, which are intended to provide the opportunity for control. But here, that is not what is needed. What is needed is influence. Now, influence is kind of like, the image here is to suggest that we create creative ripples. But with that, we don't enter to control the answers. We become part of the process, the question. Influence is not possible without credibility and trustworthiness. And it's important for us, if we're going to enter this possible leadership approach, is to be aware of where and with whom we have influence. Gaining influence is a dynamic, ongoing process, and it's critical for us to know what the sources of our relevant credibility, like we're not going to be credible on just everything, but where are we credible on a relevant concern we want to advance on, and where are we trusted in that, and where does that come from? Here, context is everything. We can have spheres of influence, and depends on where we are in our career, in our community engagement. It's possible to have spheres of influence in wider societal, institutional, or community contribution spheres. Philip Steenkamp is president of university. He can leverage his connections and so on across not only our own institution, but others. So I want to plant this question to you about where your influence is drawn from. The other level of it is in our personal and professional reputations and experiences. And those are just as valuable as the broader context. This is all in at this point in what we're facing. The next concept I want to, and all these notions, influence, and so on, presence are all related, but they're distinguishable. So presence comes from being in the present and from embodying and from being embodied in the present. So when I'm with you, you need to know that I'm all here, that you experience me as a person and not just a talking head. Authentic, what are our intentions? We have to be, in order to be seen and understood as authentic people, we need to say why we're doing what we're doing. What are our intentions? And the other part of it, an observation here, is that all of this discussion is based on an assumption that we're all in this together. So we have a relational perspective. It's not a one-person show. It's a systemic approach to a commonly experienced challenge. And in all cases, we're not focused on what we know or projecting the outcomes. We're focused on the emerging processes because we have to be fully present in meeting those. And you can follow up with a number of this discussion. Some time ago, Otto Scharmer wrote a book called Presence, the Human Purpose in the Field of the Future. And that'll be one suggestion I have for you if you want to follow up on that. The final term or thought that I want to put in front of you is the notion of wisdom. Uncertainty comes the requirement to be in the present. Practical wisdom is the exercise of judgment in making decisions without complete knowledge. To the extent they're good, they're a mix of what we know and what we intuit, being informed by the past experiences. So, but we are operating entirely in the present. The past doesn't have a lot to offer, some of these huge questions and challenges, and the future is unknown. So we again, this connects with presence. Our possibilities are in the present, but wisdom arises best in an engagement in social context. We're not a single mind out there. We are interactive people who share a challenge, a huge challenge, or many, but we choose to gather in a challenge of common interest and urgency. And wisdom derives from reflection on experience. The sort of stereotypical wisdom is the older person. I don't think that's true. I think it tends to be the case. We've had a lot more time over our lifetime to gather reflection on experience and become wise. But I've met some very wise young people who have done that in their lives to date. So, so the notion of wisdom then is the making decisions without the whole, without a proven answer, a predictable. There is no predictability. There's knowledge, but it has to be combined with experience, which is kind of like using our intuition, enables us to use our intuition in combination to come up with a you know, a decision that we're prepared to make, which we have probably been in dialogue with others about, but also we are prepared for it to be not work, but we must try because we must move forward, and we have to keep learning from our experience together in moving forward. Again, it's critical that we, could I put it this way, embrace failure productively. So what I want to suggest is that we move into, you'll have an opportunity to join a smaller discussion group and kind of get on the page with this. I'd love to hear, what your sources of uncertainty that are of greatest interest and urgency to you. And then with that, thinking about your opportunities that you have to create space for others similarly concerned and affected. Doesn't mean we're all the same, remember, but there's a problem that touches us all, for support, for understanding, for movement forward. And let me urge you not to underestimate your possibilities here. I believe that each of you have influence in particular contexts. And again, part of the authentic quality that you require in order to be able to hold space with others is to be genuinely driven by what is important to you, your purpose. Just a word about breakout rooms. You'll automatically be placed in a room and you can introduce yourself to your group, and it'll be for about 10 minutes so we can have a good conversation coming back, hopefully. You're welcome not to join if you wish, take a pass and come back after. Whatever it serves your best interest here. So Selena, can I actually, will you be doing the invitation for the breakouts? Here they come. Yes. Okay, maybe we can, let's just see here. I'm trying to figure out what I'm looking at here. Okay. Can we get some gems from you about what kind of purposes floated to the surface for you, and what kind of insights you might have about spheres of influence and a starting place? Anybody can start. Please chime in.
I see Melanie, you have your hand up.
Yeah, hi there. So yeah, my group and I, we all had different kind of sources of uncertainty, from, forest fires and heat domes to the mental health of Indigenous women, and basically, yeah, needing more liminality in leadership. And so we all kind of came to like a similar, somewhat of a conclusion that there needs to be more of like influence given to Indigenous knowledge, and helping. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there. But yeah, having that, like giving space for Indigenous knowledge and perspectives, and not just focusing all on like Western, like purely Western medicine or the Western fear of forest fires.
Others. Wisdom welcomed.
Kim,
Marilyn,
I see you have your hand up.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Kim Bernard. I've been in Rotary for 4 years now, and I had the opportunity to launch a brand new Rotary Club this year during the pandemic. And it's an eco club. So it's the first of its kind in Canada, and it's devoted to environmental causes. And the way we reached out and engaged was, first of all, obviously studying the Rotary framework that we were launching through, but then I did 2 months of Zooms, community engagement, and not really knowing how that was going to begin, because it evolved with every week. Every time I presented with a different community leader, I would take their input and feedback and weave it into the presentation. And so by the end of 8 iterations, it became this wonderful, enriched recording that's actually part of our YouTube channel now. And we created a space, a virtual space, because again, we couldn't meet in person. So through Zooms and YouTube recordings, we now have a library of discussions and talks where we facilitated collaboration amongst the various voices in our community and amongst the interests that our growing membership had. And so we were able to charter in June, and now we can do even more outreach. And I just want to say, if you're trying to start something new, you may not know what it's going to look like, but if you hold space for all the people participating, then they co-create with you. And it's really exciting. So I use my skills as a graphic designer to facilitate that process. Thank you.
That's a great example of a gradually forming space for that focus. Terrific. Other gems that you would like to share? Don't be shy. And
Marilyn, I see.
Again, don't, oh, sorry, right. Oh, right. Hey, hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. So our group had 2 individuals that work for government, and they were definitely struggling with the challenge of balance between structure and the need for change and the need for adaptability. And then the psychosocial issues within their teams. So that's a lot of demands, but we really kind of came to the idea that maybe we're just allied to the cause of listening. And that was sort of the purpose that bubbled up, and listening to understand and to be at peace with not having a response. And we didn't really get into the spheres of influence, but really more so that, you know, just starting with us is where we all need to start. So that's where we were at.
Okay, let's ask whether, can someone offer some insights about when you started to think about your sphere of influence? How easy was that? How did something come readily in relation? Oh, Cheryl, go ahead.
So from a sphere of influence, we had a good discussion in our group, and I think everybody has spheres of influence every day in their life. Every interaction with a person at any point in time is an opportunity to have an influence in some way. And it can be as simple as just taking 2 minutes to smile to someone who might be asking for money on the side of the street and acknowledging them and looking in their eyes and seeing them as a person. So there's those, and then there's spheres of influence that go beyond that through your professional life, as you were talking about. And we had people who were in our group who were from government and were working on policy. They had influence with youth. I know for myself, I'm currently a student at Royal Roads completing my master's. I'm doing a research project on holding space in the journey towards reconciliation, so no one is left behind. And so I'm really interested in this, and I've taken a lot of care to develop my process. And so it is based in emergence with my participants, and I have youth engaged. So, I mean, anything you do in your life can be an opportunity to influence.
Thank you, Cheryl. Yeah, and that's kind of like underlining what I invited you to think, that you be careful not to overlook your spheres of influence. Humility is helpful, but sometimes it gets in the way. Yeah. Anyone else with thoughts about the challenges, the age of uncertainty, in particular ways of that, and or how we engage, how you've thought about engaging.
I see we have a hand up from C. Phoenix. Would you like to unmute?
Yeah,
Oh,
I will. Can you hear me?
Connie, right.
Hi, thanks. Thanks very much. Thanks, Marilyn. It's nice to see you again. One of the things that really struck me, I haven't, you know, how we teach communication and leaders and we help them learn to listen, but something really clicked for me as we were talking in our group. And I was thinking, how is listening different now? And I think one of the ways we can really influence is listening to witness. I think we've listened to try and understand, but I wonder if we've listened to witness, and that's that holding space
Mm-hmm.
and really honoring whatever the story is in a way that allows engagement from a whole different place from the leader, but then invites that engagement
Mm-hmm.
energetically to those people who are sitting around the room. And I'm just, you know, because I've pondered, what does holding space mean? What does presence mean for, I think, probably most of my life, but have I done that? And if I have an intention that it really is to witness, and if we really sit and witness, then I think we just follow the breadcrumbs.
Really interesting point. Really interesting point, and that's a new point. That's a new point that I haven't read about, Connie. So in this literature so far, but it's really helpful. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Can I call you back? Sorry. Waterfront. Whoops. That's my next thing. My day today is crazy. Kathy can tell you about it. That's the trip to my surgeon I was talking about earlier. Really important point, Connie. And because we are tuned to the doing part being noticeable, like the activity itself being the thing, the experience of us by others is really important and probably under the radar for us, which is your point. I think it's really helpful.
Yeah. Good. Thanks for the opportunity to share.
Yeah, well, thank you for your comment. We have a couple of minutes left if anybody has some important strategic wisdom. Not strategic, that's the wrong language, wrong culture. Okay. Well, let me just point up one more thing here.
And Marilyn, just to let you know, Kendra has her hand up.
Oh, sorry, Kendra, go.
I got in at the last second. We had a really lovely talk, and it was sort of a philosophical talk about past and futures and what is unknown.
Mhm.
And I don't speak for the whole group, but I just would say, I hope that we don't deny that so many groups, like Indigenous people, African Americans, migrants, have already experienced what the masses are calling unprecedented times. So we've already confronted post-normal devastation by disease, climate, violence, and have already gone through these quite apocalyptic, uncertain transformations. So with respect to like wisdom of the past, I just hope that is like contextualized, that this could be new to us personally, a person personally, but for many people is not new.
Mm-hmm. And that would be part of recognizing difference in this work, really making, in fact, inviting that conversation.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody else? We've got, we're at 1 minute. If not, can I don't know, Selena, if this will work, because I haven't been doing this. Let's see. I wanted to put up this image because it represents for me the kind of relationships that get us across the gaps. And they're it's an image that is unexpected. It looks flimsy, but it's powerful.
So Marilyn, are you going to share your screen?
Oh,
for
what
the
a
image?
good idea. How about that? Okay, just a sec. Here we go. Share screen. Whoops, no, I have to do that before. Okay, here it is. And with it, so here's the image that I thought I was putting up. It's a representation. It looks flimsy, except that it is what is possible. It's what gets us from one world to the next. And it is all about relationship and orientation to one another. I want to end by actually thanking all of you and some of the wonderful comments and for your participation today. It was a treat for me. Over to you, Selena. Or Kathy. Kathy, you're muted.
Thanks, Mel. Yes, I think I will jump in. And Marilyn, if you don't mind sharing your screen with the slideshow from the current slide, so then we can move into leadership
Oh,
education.
yeah, absolutely.
That would be wonderful. And again, I echo Marilyn's thanks. First of all, thank you, Marilyn, in terms of, putting together, again, a space and moving through in terms of important notions as we move forward, but also for everyone in this room to be here, because it does really give me great heart to know that there's leaders out there who are doing this work and wanting to do this work and wanting to connect with others. And I did sort of go into one of the breakout rooms and I found that we had a really rich dialogue just in terms about how important being in the liminal space, being in between, the need for these kind of dialogues and conversations. So Marilyn, you did pop up the leadership education.
I didn't want to wipe you out of everybody's vision. So we'll do that once again.
Well, do it again. I was actually just waiting for you to bring it in. So
Okay.
Perfect. So lovely. And so for those of you who are interested in the leadership education piece of it, please feel free to stay on. For those who came for the leadership holding space, feel free to leave if you want. Regardless, this will be recorded, and so you will get the link and you can continue to watching pre and post as well. So thank you for your attendance, and thanks for all that you're doing out in the world. And so in terms of then shifting in terms of leadership education, I am the program head for MA in leadership, the executive leadership specialization, and the values-based leadership graduate certificate. And so I do just want to share a bit about the program, and more importantly, offer a space if you would like to ask any questions while we're here. So that might be really helpful as well. And recognize that is being recorded. So if you have more of a specific question that you may not want to go on a general recording, feel free to connect with me afterwards too, because we can go deeper. But also know if it's more of a general, lots of times questions that might are important to one person tend to be important to other people too. So just to let you know that that's kind of a framing that we're putting as we move forward. So I really do want to acknowledge that these are liminal times that we are in. And so it really is important to be in conversations about leadership. And we know that people often are promoted to mid-level or senior level positions because they're effective in their technical roles. But as we're engaging in these new leadership roles and these new challenges that we're facing, both within our organizations and beyond, often people are unprepared for what waits them. And so this is why leadership education, one of the reasons that it's really important to look at how to navigate that human side of organizational life, and really the power of creating culture to make magic happen. And it is clear that there are different capabilities needed for organization-wide responsibilities. And these do include a variety of essential executive leadership practices. So today, Marilyn expanded on one of those being navigating social and political complexities, and how what's happening out in the world impacts us individually, impacts our teams, impacts our organizations, and then how we also not only witness, but how we also then move outward to deal with and find solutions and get in action together. And there's also other executive leadership practices like modeling values implicitly and explicitly, looking at purpose-driven planning and decision-making, being transparent and authentic in our executive communication, affirming and inspiring others, as well as leading through conflict to opportunity. So this really is amplified in uncertain times and in liminal spaces. So it's so critical of how we engage together around this and be in this. So if Marilyn, you don't mind hitting to the second slide. There we go. So there's our program purpose in terms of, as we're stepping up to address these needs, we have this specialization because there are many leadership courses out there that are designed to sort of teach you what to do as a leader, but this program really is core about how to be a leader. And it's an immersive program for people who really want to promote change and transform and lead their organizations with success. And so you can sort of see that it really is delving deeper in both knowledge and skill to advance that knowing and that wisdom and that way of being and doing and relating in the world. And so again, in these times of compelling challenges, socially, environmentally, economically, politically, it's really important that we have skillful and collaborative and engaged leadership. And so we're really looking at enhancing the key capabilities and insights for professionals who are working in a multi-sector, in multiple sectors. So if we flip to the next one in terms of looking at our program overview and our structure, you can see that we have a values-based graduate certificate in leadership. And then we have that runs concurrently the expansion to the Master of Arts. And if you can flip just another slide, Marilyn, I'd like to sort of speak to then the structure. The reason for this is you can see that the values-based leadership certificate really provides the grounding and the orientation. And so, as I said, these run concurrently. And so you may decide, hey, I just want to do the graduate certificate, which is fabulous. And then you can carry on with the MA in leadership, or else you may say, I already have an MA or I have some other piece, I'm just going to take the graduate certificate. But in our leadership program, everybody will come together at that time in April to September for the first term of the MA in leadership or the graduate certificate. And then after completing the first term, if you carry on with our MA in executive leadership, you'll have a choice of electives. And you can see that you have a range of options for that. And then after that, you will have the ability to head into second term. And the reason why we offer electives is because we are not a school that wants to create cookie cutter leaders. This is really your opportunity also to drill down deeper in areas that you might enhance your own leadership opportunity. And so when you're completed your electives and you come into the second year, the focus is really on organizational change. And again, you will dig deeper in terms of some of those key executive leadership practices that you yourself want to develop and that are also in relationship to your organization or an organization in terms of what are the change needs within there. And then you will finish with leading an engaged leadership project so that you can lead change in practice. And this really is an opportunity to test run your capabilities and build your experience with, expert mentorship and coaching in order to, again, develop those skills and capabilities. So at this point, I'm going to stop, and I'm just going to open up to see if anybody has questions. And if you don't want to speak them out, you can also put them in the chat before we speak deeper to the upcoming intake. I just want to create a space to see if what you were hoping to know more about leadership education and what we're offering in terms of our executive leadership program or our graduate certificate was addressed. Okay, so, oh, I see a question here. I have a question about the stories of graduates of this program, where they are now, and how does this contribute to their opportunities? Great question. And we definitely have graduates from our values-based leadership certificate program that has run for the past 8 years. This last year, and our MA leadership program has run for over 20 years. This year has been our new specialization. So the first launch was in April 2021. And so we're just in the process of also having testimonials from our grads, and we also have our alumni. So in terms of that piece, we can also hook you up with graduate students. I don't want to speak on their behalf per se. However, we did do a webinar around leading in uncertain times. So you'll see, a couple of the graduates of our program how they've taken this values-based leadership knowledge and enhanced their own organizations and move forward. And what some of the constant feedback that I hear is how powerful it is to engage with other people, to talk about these pieces, and then be able to apply it in their organizations and move forward. So it really is about looking at, yes, how do you enhance your organization? And then in some ways, some people have then moved into more senior level leadership pieces. So that kind of gives you a bit of an overview. And again, I think that was Kim. If you'd like to talk more about that, or have a direct connection with some of our alumni, I'm more than happy to make that connection with you as well. And then I see, is it possible to share the reading list for the MAXL specialization? We can certainly talk to you about what some of our core texts are. We do in the first year work with Barrett's work and the work of the Values Center, as well as a values tool in terms of Haltona. And so Benjamin Hall's work in terms of that piece. And then we're also looking at, as our world expands, we're looking at the breadth of life theory with Dr. Cindy Blackstock, and again bringing in different ways of proceeding with values and recognizing that different worldviews have different pieces. So there's a whole richness in terms of how we move forward in the program and the different sort of readings that we offer, but also invite our cohorts to sort of develop some of and share some of those readings and literature, so that we're constantly growing and developing in terms of that piece. And I see I have a MAL and a grad certificate in executive coaching. Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you that you love the way the structure of the program has evolved, which is great. And exactly that, if you were taking your grad certificate in executive coaching, that actually is an elective that you could have potentially applied to this specialization. So that, yes, you can see that we definitely have programs that we're always sort of looking at redesigning and trying to remain in a way that's constantly dealing with what's happening in the context and the way things are showing up in the world. So thank you for Lara for that feedback. And I also see that there's a couple other people in terms of speaking to that the program has great value. and I know I'm biased. I believe in this program, and I believe in the power of us coming together and really looking at how we can enhance our character and capabilities within organizations, because it's so critical. Lots of organizations are losing leaders left, right, and center. And so we really need a place to engage and enhance that opportunity. At this point, I'm going to stop talking for just a minute and just want to throw it to my colleague, Marilyn, if there's anything in this Q&A answers that you would like to expand on or offer up. Because Marilyn was the founder of our values-based leadership program, has been an incredible champion and advocate and ally in terms of this whole work from the time that she founded it and created it to right now continuing as we evolve it. And Marilyn, shall I?
No, and because I was roaming around here getting ready to go see my surgeon, I didn't hear. But if there are any that have come in the chat that you think I could answer, if you would put them in the email for me, and I would get back to the specific person, that would be helpful.
Wonderful.
And I just want to tell you what it's a treat is to work with Kathy Bishop. She has done a spectacular job of evolving this forward, and you're in good hands.
Yeah. Well, thank you. It takes a community, I believe, and we definitely have a community here. I think that's one of the sweet spots at Rural Roads, that we definitely have a rich community that carries on. Often I'll hear of students reconnecting in different contexts, different places. So well, then what I will say is I'll just carry on in terms of our upcoming intake. So our next specialization, which is offered once a year, comes in April 18th, 2022. And so the application deadline is January. That may be extended. So if you can get it, if you could get it done by January, that would be ideal. However, if you need a little bit more time, we're looking at sort of opening that up. And then Marilyn, if you don't want to mind switching over to the next slide, just to recognize that there's lots of people here that are in service to you. We have enrollment advisors, we have the international admissions and registration, and of course, I'm always happy to connect with you further if you have any questions or if things have risen up for you. Please feel free to send me an email, and either I can answer that via email or we can set another time to talk. And then at this point, then our final slide is just to give a heartfelt thank you. So I look forward to when our paths cross, and know that we're in it for the long game. You know, leadership is a long game. So wonderful. Well, take care. Thank you.